Chapter 2 of Deliver Me From Eva by Paul Bailey. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Ben Tucker. Chapter 2. Our week in San Francisco proved a memorable one. Every day was rich with new discovery, and clothed about with all the warmth of purloined bliss. Emergence from staid bachelordom to devoted husband was not the perilous, soul-shaking affair my shy nature would have imagined. Rather, it became the pleasantest of tasks, and I took to my new role with avidity and zest. Business was forgotten. I called on none of my firm's accounts, and for all the good my journey availed the corporate law firm of Allard and Brinkley, I might have accomplished more by never having made the trip. But that could not have been. What I in reckless exhilaration perceived as luck's gracious gain was no less than a firmly determined mystery on the part of fate. Life's subsequent pattern was to inform me of this in ways unforgettable, but in my week of joy I was young again, most deeply alive with every thought and act centered upon the woman I so suddenly and strangely had taken to wife. The process of Eva's discovery was a rich experience. The manner by which the threads of our separate existences so quickly and completely wove themselves into firm corded pattern was incredibly profound. For one thing, I, by nature and inclination, was of serious turn, yet never in lifetime search could I have found a personality so completely and sympathetically of the same pattern. Art and music were sustaining adjuncts to my life, but my capabilities and understandings of these things appeared almost puerile and trivial beside the aesthetic depths to which Eva Craner's soul was revealed to me. Unfoldment of her talents and accomplishments came slowly, in the most modest and unassuming of manners. As an instance, there was the pleasing shock of her pianistic skill. She had mentioned her brother's hopes and aspirations in the concert field, and in the heat of our nuptial afflatus, I promptly had forgotten it. What was revealed to me when my comely bride struck the first chords from the Argonaut's piano is not so easily forgotten. It was late. We had come home from the theater by the rather circuitous route of Cosgrays, and were heady with champagne and the warmth of our great secret. A few loiterers were spotted about the Argonaut's richly padded lobby. Laughing like children at a school recess, we had started across the big room toward the elevator. As always, male eyes instantly and covetously were upon Eva, who this night was gowned and caped in the glittering beauty of her new clothes. I may have been intoxicated, or it could have been the youth joy freshly possessing me that stayed our journey mid-floor. "Wait," I said, spying, as though for the first time, the deserted music room to the left. She eyed me with a questioning half-smile. "Come, Eva," I laughed. "I shall play for you." Impulsively, and before she could remonstrate, I grasped her arm and led her up the 3 carpeted steps to the music cove and its Steinway. Chuckling, in gayest of humor, I parted my coat-tails in mocking imitation of the professional concertmaster, and sat myself down to the keyboard. After a quick muss of my graying black hair until it fell about my ears, and after an absurd flexing of fingers and rubbing of hands, I endeavored to treat our happy souls to the airiest trills of Chopin. I was vain of my accomplishments, and in the moment drunk enough that it did not seem improper or ridiculous to serenade my bed partner from the hotel's music room at 1 a.m. in the morning. "Like it?" I asked. "I love it," she delightedly cried, flinging an arm about my shoulders and shamelessly hugging me. "Darling, you're wonderful." "Now it's your turn," I said, rising. "No," she insisted. "You play to me. Don't stop, Mark." "It's your turn." "What gave you the idea I could play?" She smiled coquettishly as I drew her to the bench beside me. "All little girls can play," I laughed. "Try chopsticks if you know no other." Like naked little elves at dance, her slim fingers merrily tinkled the scale for just a brief moment. I was delighted in the discovery she was no tyro. Then suddenly Eva stopped. Her eyes focused queerly on the crystalled lights and plush curtains across the room. Silently, mysteriously, her hands crawled upward to her head. The gaiety on her face dissolved in a look of stern power. While I watched, the fingers of her right hand pushed themselves up through the immaculate whorls of her beautiful hair, until her hand lay directly at her forehead, fingers curved across the scalp. Next I saw her left hand firmly grasp the back of her head, and watch amazed while she squeezed at her cranium until her fingers turned bloodless and white. Instantly, and before my thoughts could frame a question, her hands dropped to the keyboard, and, as though she were utterly oblivious to my presence, a mighty chord of power and resonance rolled from out the Steinway. While I sat, literally struck dumb by what I had seen, the Liszt concerto, in all its spirited grandeur, began pouring forth in a way that could never have excelled in its pristine conception. For 10 minutes I sat enthralled. At my touch, she finally shuddered and ceased playing. "My God, Ava, where did you ever learn to—" For answer, she stared across the piano and commenced playing something that in all my musical experience I never had heard before. It had all the simplicity of true harmonic greatness, with a cadence and meter resembling the spaced throb of an epic poem. But the soul of that music cried out with all the mystery since the world began. My skin pimpled, my back grew cold, I felt my neck swell, and I trembled with sick fright. "Ava!" I half shouted. She stopped. With the docility of a child, she turned wonderingly toward me. "Ava, what are you doing?" Slowly the dawn of recognition came to her face. "Oh," she sighed, as though awakening from a dream. "Darling, what is that music? I don't know," she sighed. Her head drooped to my shoulder, and she sobbed for a moment. "I've never heard it before either." Her composure returned almost instantly. She dabbed her handkerchief to her gray-green eyes and smiled bravely and charmingly. We both turned. At our backs were all the lobby's midnight loiterers. "Take me to bed, Mark," she whispered. "Please, Mark, take me to bed." Trembling, as though I had walked eternity's brink, and with the nervous jerkiness of a shy man before the candid gaze of many, I led my bride through the questioning huddle of uninvited guests. End of chapter 2.